Hi guys, we're Cuddles and Rage.
Hello.
And we're coming to you from our home right outside of Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes, and we're super excited to be participating in Quirk's Horror Week. Our book, Bites of Terror, came out with Quirk on March 24th of this year.
Yes, and it is a horror anthology, which is something that we love so much. And I think what's special about Bites of Terror is that we did it in our Cuddles and Rage style, which, if you're not familiar, not only do we illustrate comics, but we also sculpt them. And Bites of Terror is a fully handmade horror, 144 pages of sculpted comics.
Yeah, and all told through food, which is our second favorite thing to horror.
Yes.
We're surrounded by horror right now in our front room, but not by food. So we should fix that.
Yeah, definitely. we totally missed the ball on that one. So a little bit about the book, taking a look inside so that you guys can see the diorama action. So basically, like Jimmy said, there are 10 stories in here, and we had a lot of fun with the names. This is Reap What You Sow, which is about a widowed watermelon. And basically, we just had so much fun coming up with all these different tales and trying to find a way to really use food as the vehicle to get gory and weird and strange with our storytelling.
Yeah, definitely focusing on getting to tell 10 small stories, short stories, all in this horror world, really paying homage to some of our favorite kinds of horror, like the anthology book and the anthology films, and things like Tales from the Crypt and Creepshow and other films like that, books that come out of that whole style with EC Comics.
Yeah, we definitely read a lot from the EC Tales from the Crypt, because it's like such a classic thing to go to. But with the book, we have in front of here some of our props. This is from the Cake Creeper's lair, and here's the Cake Creeper himself. So just to talk a little bit about how we make our sets and get them going. So some of the props are things that we find at vintage antique stores, and some of the props are handmade by us, so it's a whole mix of things. We had a lot of fun with this book, which is kind of different than what we've usually done. We pushed our limits really far. It included some lighting and included a lot of different new techniques, like using, this is so tiny, you won't be able to see it, so it's just like super glue and ink to make fire. Just little things like that added up. And so some of the greatest feedback that we've heard from you guys who have bought the book is just not only reading it for the stories, but then going back through and seeing all that detail that we put in there. And that means so much to us, because we did put a lot of effort into keeping like little hidden jokes inside, which, by the way, if you're on the hunt for middle-aged pig, then he's somewhere in this set right now. And yeah, we just try to always insert some of our creativity and push ourselves to the limits with every new project.
Yeah, I think that the detail that you talked about and how we just approached each story as its own little project, trying to make sure that everything in the scenes, everything in the settings was touched by us. Like, we picked everything that went into every shot. We made lots of tiny little things to go into the scenes and settings. It was fun to dig into the details.
Yes, and in here we even have a little tiny Bites of Terror book that you'll see at the very opening page. But we often get asked, like, what materials do we use to make our characters? So although the sets are very mixed media and they come from a range of things, most of our characters come from polymer clay. This is a brand that I use, Primo, to sculpt a lot of the stuff, and then clays and pastels. So we have a lot of tutorials on our YouTube where you can see how we make some of our characters, and we really walk through our process there.
Yeah, some of the behind the scenes there of how it comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made a ton of characters for this book. How many do you think?
Oh gosh, at least 100.
Yeah.
There's a cookie funeral, so I know that filled up like like half the characters. And I guess talking about food and humor, one cool thing that we did do that we've been sharing with people is we made like this crazy scratch and sniff card with the book. So that while you go through and you read the tales, you'll be able to, like, at certain spots, like, really get the full experience. So that was something really fun where we just tried to lean into the food side, and also just not only the diorama side, but like telling a story using all your senses.
Yeah, I think the mixed media aspect of what we do sort of makes it feel more alive, and I think bringing this extra dimension to the storytelling was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people come to us and be like, this was great, but there's some bad smells in here, which any scratch and sniff thing needs like some crazy smells.
Yeah, and you can get those through our site. Just contact us there if you're interested in talking to us about it.
Totally. So I guess let's talk about some of our horror influences.
Oh, sure, yeah. So we brought out a stack of things to show you some of the things that we played or listened to or watched while we were making the book.
Yeah, we consume all things horror.
Yeah.
The music, the movies, the art, anything really.
So we've got a stack of movies here that played an influence for us. This is the Tales from the Crypt, the 1970s film version, which I think is really fantastic. Good. Yeah. So this was a big influence on our experience of setting the mood and telling the stories here. Kind of always looking for our own twist on things, but understanding the classics and doing our homework is really important.
Was that the one with the coaster story?
Oh, the coaster.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I felt like when that moment happened, I was like, you know who's gonna die.
So one of the other things that we really try to do with the story is play into the sort of grindhouse horror. Like, we love all kinds of horror, all kinds of film, really. But this movie is one of my favorites in the lower budget style, and it has the best tagline ever. This is Blood Rage, which is a Thanksgiving horror film.
Oh, yes. Not many of them.
And its tagline is, "This Thanksgiving, it's not cranberry sauce."
And it is not. Yeah, we watch that every Thanksgiving. And Arrow's a really cool company to check out.
Definitely. There's just such a sense of fun to this that we definitely were looking at these kind of influences to bring some humor and fun to the book.
Yeah, I think that's like one of my favorite things about horror is that it's not really, it can be scary, but then it can also be hilarious and fun at the same time.
That's right. You want to talk about this one?
Oh, one of my favorite films, The Swimmer. Probably not in the horror genre, but I think this movie really talks about like the weirdness and the kind of like deep, I guess, introspective views that we gave to our characters. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't seen this wonderful Burt Lancaster film, check it out. Especially if you're like, we always hear couples be like, I love horror, but then my spouse or my partner's not really into it. Then that's a good one to lean into the weird with.
I think it's horror adjacent. It feels like a Twilight Zone episode in a lot of ways, and I think that plays into sort of our influences here too.
Definitely.
This is another anthology film, which I love this one. I think one of the things we really were focused on, this is, by the way, Tales from the Hood. This has a great wraparound. So in an anthology, I think the best ones are the ones that work in a wraparound story that ties it all together, and this one is excellent at that. We really leaned into what these folks were able to do with that concept in writing our Kid Creeper wraparound for the book.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite films. Just the storytelling in there is something that I think if you haven't seen Tales from the Hood, then you have a big gap in your horror viewing.
Yeah, that's a great one. The last movie that we wanted to talk about today is just my all-time favorite. It's Dawn of the Dead. We did little nods, and this is something that I met George Romero, and he signed this for me. We miss him very dearly. But we did a little homage to George Romero in our book.
Try and find it.
But this is just an all-time classic, and these are just really influential and important to me.
Yeah, and a huge part of our making the book and our love of horror is that we wanted to share that with you guys. So we have a list on Letterboxd that shows all the horror films that influence books. It's way bigger than just that baby stack. We didn't want to show you our Blu-ray collection downstairs because that would take too long. We don't have all day. So let's talk about some of the music.
Sure, yeah. So when we were writing the book, we were listening to music to set the mood and sort of get into a zone. So we brought a couple of albums to share as well. Here, I'll let you share this one first. Just things we were listening to.
Oh, Campfire Creepers by Rob. He just did the Hansel and Gretel story. Oh, Gretel and Hansel, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, that score is great.
So that was one you were listening to.
Yeah, this is one I was listening to. It's not really a soundtrack for any movie per se, but Rob does really great kind of like horror-inspired music that, especially for writers, you know, there aren't any lyrics or anything to it. So I personally loved writing to it because I could just zone out and just imagine myself in the environment. There you go.
Got it.
I feel like I need white gloves when I touch our vinyl collection because it's very precious.
All right, so this is one that I was listening to a lot. It's Twins of Evil. This is a Hammer horror film by Harry Robinson, and this one's really great. So if you know Hammer horror, then you know sort of that gothic 70s vibe that it puts out, and this score is excellent. I listened to this on many stories that I wrote just because it gets you in such a cool, fun, gothic-y horror kind of mood, which I think mainly I listened to it so much because of the Cape Creeper and trying to capture a feeling of those settings.
Yeah, and I think working together, you know, there are definitely some pieces of music that Jimmy knows about that I might not, and so that was definitely one where if I was editing a story he was working on, I got to listen to some music that I hadn't heard before. So I really liked that part of the collaborative process.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah. I don't think I introduced any music to you because you pretty much know everything.
There's a couple things coming here. Okay, so the third one that we wanted to share is the John Harrison score for Day of the Dead.
Ooh.
Another Romero.
Beautiful cover.
Yeah, this is an original that Jason Garber gifted us. Thanks, Jason. But this is my favorite horror soundtrack of all time, favorite horror score. This is such a great movie, and there's just such a cool mood with this one. It's not scary all the time. It sort of has an interesting vibe to it, like a tropical vibe at times, which some other zombie film soundtracks have, like Fabio Frizzi's or the other Italians who make so much great music.
Yeah.
But I just love the feeling of this, and so listening to it puts me in a place that it's kind of fun to write in.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we also have a Bite to Tear playlist on Spotify and YouTube, and where you can hear all the music. But that soundtrack specifically, I feel like that's the first thing that comes on when we put it on. So I have it going in my head the whole time, even when I'm just doing normal things.
This is one that is not on Spotify, but do you want to talk about this one?
Yes, and I'm shocked that I didn't bring out my action figure. So the Slumber Party Massacre is one of my favorite films, female directed, which is amazing. And this one definitely inspired the title for Pizza Party Massacre. And gosh, this soundtrack is just, once you have it on, like you know you're listening to Slumber Party Massacre. And I think it was her brother that did the soundtrack.
I believe that's right.
Yeah. So see, like, we don't just like listen to the music. We go as far as we can with knowing everything about the music and the film. So if you haven't seen the Slumber Party Massacre, check it out. And in reading Pizza Party Massacre, I do give a little nod to the movie in there. So if you find that little nod, send us a little note at Cuddles and Rage.
All right, last one we have another George Romero and another John Harrison, but I thought this one was appropriate to end on. It's Creepshow, which is the score to the George Romero film that he worked on with Stephen King.
Yeah.
We both listened to this one quite a bit. Again, it has that kind of fun horror mood, which is what we were really going for. It's fun, kind of spooky.
And I like the sound of the Ted Danson story. Like that one I listened to a lot. And the cover art is just beautiful. I think that's what's cool about vinyl, especially horror vinyl, is that not only getting inspired by the music, but then the artists who interpret the films.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should mention this is Ghoulish Gary Pullen who did the art to this. This is a Waxwork Records release. We showed some Death Waltz records, and these are all great though. And you know, like you said, we have a Spotify playlist with some other things we were listening to.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. And we also did a podcast episode on People I Think Are Cool, where we talk about the soundtracks and the stories that they're paired with, and also some of the history behind the film. So if you want to dig deeper, then definitely check that out. Well, I think one other thing, just to like wrap it up, part of us being crazy mixed media people is that we also make little videos.
That's right.
And because we had so much fun writing the stories, we made little kind of vignettes inspired by characters from Bites of Terror that you can check out.
That's right. Those are on our YouTube or our Instagram. We're at Cuddles and Rage everywhere. That's been fun to bring these characters to life since we've sculpted them. It's kind of do little handheld animations that go deeper into the stories or give you some behind the scenes there.
Yeah. So we want to give you a full reading experience where if you want more Bites of Terror, that you can check out the stories in our live action form, which is weird and fun, which kind of our thing. But then also on bitesofterror.com, I know we're like the people in class who's like, give me more homework. But we show some behind the scenes on bitesofterror.com and talk more about our process and a little bit more about each character. So if you love the graphic novel and you want to dive a little deeper, we've provided a lot of different places for you to just get lost in the world.
That's right.
All right, well,
It's been fun.
We're Bites of Terror maniacs and horror maniacs, so to be part of Horror Week means so much to us. I mean, honestly, isn't every week Horror Week?
Yeah, around here it is.
I think so. All right, guys.
Yep, happy Horror Week.
Happy Horror Weekend. Thank you so much for having us. We're Liz and Jimmy.